Hello, hello. It's Jack Ellison with the 10,000 Sales Podcast. Welcome to another episode. I'm excited today. And when I say excited, literally excited. I'm a software guru. I love software, and I'm pleased and honored to have Aspire Software today. And I have three guests, my first three guest podcast. I'm excited about that as well. But I've got Tabitha McComas, Chris Coulter, and Mark Layton. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great. Thank you for having us.
Well, no, it's a pleasure. I think it's you're supporting a passion project of mine, the 10,000 podcast, not to keep saying the name 1,000 times, but it's really an intent to get innovative things within the business of cleaning out there to end users who may or may not be aware that they need you or need the product or solution. And my hope today is we'll take about an hour to kind of go through, a little bit about you guys, about your company, and really look at take a deep dive into your solution that you think, and I think, and that's a great solution, a great offering out there. So I typically like to start the whole podcast out letting you guys give a little bit of introduction about yourself. This is kind of like a quasi sales call, a virtual sales call. And as you know, most sales calls start off with just kind of shooting the gab about who you are and where you are. I think most of you, if I'm correct, I don't think you're really software gurus necessarily. You probably are now, but you guys have prior lives of getting into the JanSan business, right? Overall,
yes, absolutely.
Sir. Chris, you want to start? How did you get into the business of cleaning? How did you get to where you are right now?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question and pretty interesting path for me. When I looked at the cleaning industry, I was like, I don't know if this is something that really interests me at all. And a family friend owned a janitorial distribution company, and they've been recruiting me for a few years, and I think you really need to learn what the industry is, and you'd actually be surprised at what we do, and you'd really love it. And so I did a ride-along day and went on site with a bunch of locations and learned more about the industry. And I was like, these are some really great people, and it was really an interesting sale for me, and I was sold on it. So I went to work for a company here in St. Louis, Missouri, where I live still today, and I went into the distribution sales for 5 years.
Nice.
Then, Aspire came around, and it was another opportunity that I couldn't say no to, a really rapidly growing company in the tech space, and that changes people's lives, and I'm all about helping people. And that was something that drew me to janitorial distribution as well, as there's so many outdated processes and products being used that we could really improve and change those people's lives.
I love it. What about you, Mark?
Yeah, so my journey is a little bit different from Chris's in the sense that the first time that I swung a low-speed floor machine was actually in boot camp at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. That was my first little quasi-introduction to some level of commercial cleaning. But actually, I spent the better part of the 2000s in the Dallas-Fort Worth market working for various privately owned and publicly traded commercial janitorial contractors, building service contractors, in roles that varied from an operations manager to a regional director of operations, district manager, and eventually a branch manager for a very large publicly traded company.
That is awesome. So we got distribution lined up. We got the BSCs lined up. So Tabitha, close us out. How did you get into this business?
Yeah, so my path is also a little bit different. I started my career at an industrial laundry company. So we were responsible for, we cleaned restrooms primarily. We refilled hand sanitizer, soap, all the consumables. We also actually washed the mats and the rugs and got them back out on a weekly service. So I've been in the service industry my whole career. I started there. I was an Aspire user in a different vertical than the janitorial space at one point, and then I joined the Aspire team about a year and a half ago.
That's awesome. So we got a trifecta. So you guys definitely know the business. You've been out the late night demos. You've been doing the late night work. So you got the ground from the ground floor up. So, what we'd like to, as we talk about this, the people behind this, if anything, as you're pitching your product, the product's one thing, the people and the process are the other two things. And I think, the track record sounds like you guys are on path with knowing the business. So that's a great start. Now, speak about the company a little bit. Aspire overall, what's the story behind these guys? Because what I remember Aspire from, and again, I I've loosely been in kind of the services business here and there, and I had some friends of mine who I believe used your lawn care software. But if I believe, and again, is that correct? You guys, that's really the roots of Aspire, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Speak a little bit about that. The foundation of Aspire. How old's the company overall?
Go ahead, Mark, if you want.
Yeah, sure. So we were founded about 9.5 years ago. We'll celebrate our 10-year anniversary this coming May, which is a phenomenal milestone in the history of our organization. And we actually come from the passion and love of the trade skills and bettering the lives of people in the trade skills, and
Sure.
Janitorial being one of those. So while we were founded in the roots of the landscaping industry, landscaping and commercial janitorial very closely align with the history of how companies operate in those trade skill industries. So, if you think about the QuickBooks instances for their accounting platform, but then maybe they've got spreadsheets for bidding and they're tracking labor on a manual process or timesheet. And the love came for how do we create process efficiency and help return net profit through that scale of efficiency to these companies' bottom line while making their life better in the process.
And overall, the JanSan solution, and we'll take a dive. One of the things we're going to do today is take a kind of high-level overview of the demo of the website as well and kind of the features and functionalities of it. But how long has the JanSan solution, or the piece of the JanSan piece, how long has that really been in place, been a focus? Because I see your advertising everywhere, and it's great, beautiful advertising, quite honestly. But how long has that been a focus for the company overall?
I would say it's been a major focus over the last little over a year for us. The similarities has kind of been alluded to throughout this conversation thus far. It really just lines up so perfectly with what's going on in the janitorial space. And it just made too much sense for us not to do that, just because, as you know very well, a lot of the processes that are happening in the janitorial space are just so, they're outdated at this point, and we really know that we can provide so much value for those companies. And so it's exciting to move into this space and really show what we're capable of.
No, I
Yeah,
love
and we
it.
also found that some of our current landscape companies will have, maybe a janitorial division, and they were already using Aspire for the solution on that division as well.
Nice. No, it's interesting. Like most of you've been in the business on the BSC side of it, the services side of it, or you've been selling to the BSCs. But, the one thing that appealed to me as I was looking at you guys, and I reached out to have an interview is really, I look at these contract cleaners, and I put them in three buckets. That's probably naive of me. You got the big heavy hitters that are the 800-pound gorillas. You got the middle guys, are out there. Let's just call it 10 to 50 million. And you got the guys less than 10 million. Probably a little less would be small, but they all three have something in common, or at least definitely the bottom two do, that have something in common. And I think through my experiences, and again, maybe I'm wrong, and this is no disrespect, but I think they all kind of reach a plateau at a certain point, and they wonder why they can't take it to that next level. And again, that's all three companies. The bigger you get, it doesn't get easier to get bigger. You may have more capital, but the small companies, the mid-sized companies for sure, is just, as a chemical slinger all my life, what can I do to make more profit? And COVID kind of gave everyone a little bit of a boost because of just COVID. But prior to COVID, and kind of how we're going back into this a little bit, is I think there's a lot of companies, and I'd love you guys to talk about it, but those companies that have reached that plateau or that glass ceiling are looking for ways to break through it. And I'm super high on technology. I don't care, I joke when I say this, but the reality is, having a cell phone 20 years ago was kind of cutting edge, and people, well, I don't want that. People are trying to track me. I could use my fax machine. Well, imagine walking away for more than 10 minutes with your cell phone. That's a tool. And I guess, what are you seeing out there, Mark or Tabitha? What are you guys seeing out there as far as those BSCs that they kind of reach the limit and they say, really, how can you guys help me take it to that next level? What do you feel the software does for them?
Yeah, I'll take the first part of that and then let Tabitha jump in here as well. I think, when you look at the companies in that size bracket, one thing that stands out to me that I really love to talk to our clients about on a daily basis is there's really two ways to grow your organization, right? And that's obviously the number one thing people think about is top line revenue. But if they really thought about how much they could grow their bottom line through scale of efficiency, and once they protect what they've built, because they've obviously done a phenomenal job in the market they're serving with generating a company to that size and supplying that need in that market, but how do they protect that long term? And that long term process of protection is evolved around protecting that profitability that you've created and the relationships in the market that you've created. But at a certain point, as you mentioned with the tools, you have to invest in something as a business owner or operator that allows your company to scale to as big as you want to get it, or maintain and protect what you currently have. Not everybody wants to grow top line for the privately held industry, but for a lot of companies too, what's the saleable factor? What's the exit plan in the market? What's their long-term vision for the organization and the people that are within their organization? And I think that's where a system of scale that can grow with the organization and invest and protect what they've built is critical for any business owner.
Tabitha, you got anything?
Yeah, I was just gonna, add to that is, what does that mean when you're thinking about a software? So how do I get to that, right? How am I actually protecting that? And it's because you have the data of where you're actually being profitable.
Yep.
You're going to have an understanding of, this building, even though it's a nice Class A that we've been working for a really long time. It turns out that my gross margin on here is so low, it's not even worth me keeping the revenue because it's not a profitable account. So having the insight of, maybe I need to step back from certain accounts, or maybe I need to go over and push harder on specific service lines because I have really nice gross margins on my floor care, my window washing, and that's where all the money's really being revenue is coming from. That's where I need to push. So having something like Aspire to give you that insight.
You guys hit on two of my. You're getting me excited, so thank you. It's just there's two things. You mentioned scale. And I was trying to think of an analogy of my career. And again, I've been on the sales side, but the analogy I use is you've got to learn how to leverage and scale. And people go, well, I know what leverage is. I know what scale is. Well, do you really know what leverage and scale is? And I break it down very simply because I'm not the smartest guy. But leverage, in my opinion, is something like, how do I take a pound of pressure and push 100 pounds? And if I can do that, that's pretty damn good leverage, right? If I can take a pound of pressure and push it 100 pounds, that's great. And then the question to Mark, as you mentioned, scale. How do I take that across different buckets of my business and take that leverage, whether it be window cleaning, whether it be hard floor maintenance, whether it be disinfecting, and take that leverage I've created and scale that across the organization. So I'm huge on leverage and scale. And Tabitha, as you said, the beauty I like as well is how do you manage what you can't measure? And I've seen so many companies out there that you ask them if they're profitable. And a lot of these folks, and God bless them, a lot of these folks will look at it and say, hey, I'm making more than I made yesterday, so I'm assuming I'm doing the right things. And you may not be doing. And quite honestly, to your point, Tabitha, you could be losing money on certain segments that you either need to enhance or exit out of those contracts because you're losing money. And what's the net result? Yeah, your sales would go down, but your profits should go up. So I'm huge on those buzzwords you just threw out. And have you seen that again? Focus here is on JanSan, but I've heard great things what you're doing on the other side with the landscaping, and not to bring that back, but I've got to imagine you've got testimonials up and down about helping companies just break through that glass barrier and really take it to the whole next level. Is that a fair assumption?
Absolutely. I was going to say absolutely, it's a fair assumption. And when you look at the statistics of companies that are on Aspire versus companies that are not on Aspire, and some of these top 100 and top 150 lists for companies, it's pretty dramatic, the differentiators of those that are on Aspire. And I feel like it's kind of an important thing to touch on too, Jack, is kind of the what and the why of Aspire, because we've done a good job of kind of talking about some of the things we do. But what Aspire really is it's a business management software that's going to feature end-to-end functionality that ultimately provides real-time job costing, field management tools, and financial insights that are really needed by all different types of service providers, whether that be the landscaping or janitorial. And that ultimately is going to be helping you increase your profitability and visibility, as we've been alluding to as well. And the why people would want that is the increased revenue and profitability, as we touched on. So work smarter, not harder. And Aspire provides that insight through real-time job costing, relevant reporting, and the ability to make those strategic decisions in the moment. I don't know how many companies when I was working in distribution that were literally making decisions off of information that was 2 months old, and sometimes even older than that. It's crazy how hard it is to run a profitable business when you're behind the eight ball like that. The other part is cost management, as Mark talked about really well, is that scalable growth. We provide the ability to create and institute those business systems across all levels of the staff. So that means standardizing your processes, creating that consistency, and ultimately maintain your operations that are going to be able to support a healthy business and be able to scale. And the other part of having a software in place too is to really improve your service. The janitorial industry, that service is so key, as everyone knows, with your client. If you don't have that relationship, you're not going to maintain your contracts. And Aspire allows that ability to maximize and command and control your business. It's really makes for an awesome customer experience.
No, I agree. The 4 Ps. I've got the foundation behind the whole 10,000 podcast is basically people, process, products, and perceptions. Perceptions, as you know, you could be doing the best on the people, the best on the products, the best on the processes, but if the perception is negative, it's all for nothing. So I love that aspect as well. And, looking at your arsenal, what you have in this package, and again, we'll take a demo of it, but you've got a CRM, you've got an estimating tool, you've got a scheduling tool, you've got a purchasing tool, mobile time, site audit, invoicing, equipment, reporting, job costing, accounting, and payroll. So it's kind of like this I don't even say a trifecta, it's a 20-fecta you got in here that you've kind of pulled this solution
We like to
together.
call it a wheel.
A will, yeah, a will. I love it.
Yeah, workflow will.
But let me ask you, because I think, and again, going back to cell phones, people didn't want to embrace cell phones when they first come out, just because they thought it was too cumbersome. They thought it was above them maybe, or they just didn't have the savvy. You guys are in this market. The advertising's proven it. The fact that you're here today talking to the Jan/San industry as a whole, you guys are focused on this like a laser. But what are some of the oppositions? Like if I'm a guy who, let's just say 65, I run a $10 million, $15 million, $20 million BSC. What are some of the pushbacks you're getting, and how do you get past some of those barriers to kind of having a conversation that truly is a true conversation? Mark, I'll ask you, because I'm learning as I go with the podcast, and I need to.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you mentioned the cell phone analogy as it relates to that question, because I remember when I started in the industry in the early 2000s, we had the first iteration of cell phones, so you didn't really have the smart or SMS texting capability and things of that nature. I remember having a Nextel phone with a two-way radio built into it that I could talk to my coworkers on. But it really wasn't a tool that you used because nobody thought of it in that way at that time. So, then the industry was very, there was a real lack of transparency, I should say, as it relates to what you delivered to your client. In other words, you were typically graded on whether you got a complaint the next day or not from the cleaning crew the night before. Well, now the market's shifted and there's a complete focus in transparency. Well, how do you provide that transparency if you don't have the data or the tools around it? And so, as it relates to that owner at 65 of a $10 million company, change is hard. So the one question we ask is, well, what's the pain of staying versus the pain of change?
Yep.
Which is going to yield you a better result? And then it's our job to articulate the value and understand how it's going to impact the organization and be able to relay that to build that trust with our prospective clients as well as their team members, to really have them understand we're here to help their process efficiency, to help them scale as an organization, and to make their administrative life a million times easier on a daily basis.
Oh, great feedback. And, I've seen some companies out there as well, maybe that 65-year-old, just using the analogy, is not willing to go through that. He's like a better word, he's comfortably numb. That's probably a good term. They're comfortably numb. It's not so painful that, they want to go forward, but it's not so unpainful that they're worried about falling backwards. But, I've seen companies out there, even, you look at the age brackets out there, and there's a younger generation that we're working to get into the Jan/San space. I don't know about you guys, but it's probably the last space I ever thought I'd be in at 52. But I love the business for various reasons. But I have seen some proactive companies that said, you're looking at the young people coming in and say, maybe this is a good way because, these people who are coming into the business have been on computers since they've been one, and for them, it's not difficult. It's not challenging. The expertise of the owner who built all the processes for the most part is there. Then you've got the younger guy with the technology that can, implement that knowledge, if you will, that tribal knowledge, kind of share that and put that into a system like Aspire that would actually, get the net results that a young person coming into the business can bring something to the company automatically. The older person in the business that maybe have that wealth information, they're indirectly helping by just kind of regurgitating all the data and all the facts that they know to help take the thing. So I love the beauty of what you guys are doing. And I think you guys had a pretty huge win recently, right? Is that right, Chris? You have something to kind of broadcast out that was a recent win?
Yeah, we're really excited about our latest partnership that's moving forward here this year with Service Master Clean. It was Tabitha was, I believe, part of the original demonstration process with it, and she's actually going to go through the product with us today. But it's something that we are very excited about, and it's going to be awesome for both of us.
That's awesome. Did you find, and you guys used a fancy term? I've got the term here. I've got to read it because I've heard it before, but not like this. But the Franken system. What is? Tell me about that. What do you? Because I know exactly what you're saying, but tell me more about that. Because Tabitha, what? Give me the definition. Because everybody knows what this is. They just maybe haven't put a term to it.
Yeah. So what we see, Mark had kind of mentioned earlier, is you might have spreadsheets where you're doing your estimating, and then maybe you're invoicing out of your QuickBooks, and you have all of these solutions that are great, but they're standalone solutions that might not talk to each other.
Yeah.
So we call it a Franken-system because you kind of patch milled. You might have some APIs, or you might have some manual processes to get all of these things to run your business. But when Aspire was formed, the idea was, let's take all of these operational tasks, basically your workflow, the things that you do every single day, and put them into one system that talks to each other. So when you're thinking about Aspire, and we kind of say that it turns into the Aspire wheel, is you create the estimate in Aspire, and it automatically will then trigger how many materials you had from that estimate, the chemicals that you need to purchase in our purchasing assistant. The amount of hours that you need to take to perform the task or the service goes into our scheduling assistant. And then that matches up to the cleaner that's actually going to be doing the work. And we'll jump into the product in a little bit. But that's the idea, is you have all of these patchwork solutions, and you're bringing all of those things into one.
Love it. Love it. The term's got to resonate. I'm sure you get a lot of chuckles when you see that. But as far as flexibility of the system as well, I guess you guys were chosen. This new customer, you were chosen. If you had to say, what are the three things? Again, I'm just thinking the top of my head. The three things is, all of a sudden you brought scale to an organization that's across the country, like that. Again, it's probably not that quick, but once they go live, once they're trained, I got to imagine the scalability is something that appealed to them. What other qualities did they choose you guys to kind of run with? What? Mark or Chris, what was the driving force behind their decision?
Yeah, I think, a big part of it, as we mentioned, scalability, is what does growth look like on both sides of that fence? What does growth look like for Service Master Clean, and what's that growth look like for Aspire? And how do we manage our clients' needs based on their scale? And so one of the things that differentiates us from a lot of the industry is that when we look at our product roadmap and we talk about development of new feature and functionality within the platform, we don't just arbitrarily say we think this would be good for the industry. It all comes from direct customer feedback that are actually using the platform on a daily basis. So it's something they've seen a need for in their market, within their industry, for the betterment of their company, as well as the service they're providing to their clients. And our roadmap identifies those features and functionality, and then we chart a course to develop that and release that. And I think that's a big part of it. When you look at any end-to-end software or SaaS product, when you talk about wholesale change, is that company going to grow and scale with you? Because change is hard enough. Doing it more than once because you outgrow a platform is something that nobody's interested in.
Absolutely.
Jack.
Yeah, go ahead,
Sorry
Chris.
to talk over you. Just to add to that too, I think I think it's really important when we talk about it, because Mark alluded to it, it's truly a partnership. In that development, it's a two-way road. We as much as companies are looking at Aspire, we're looking at them as well to make sure they're a good fit for what we do, because retention is extremely important to us. And we don't want to just sign people up to our platform to sign them up. We want customers for life. And that's why we put so much into R&D. And that's why we have such a intensive sales process that really dives into our customers and prospects and what they're doing and see if it does fit well.
No, I think that's you look at these different aspects, just having a CRM role, that's tough enough, roll into an accounting, a site audit software, the purchasing side, all these pieces, just if you think about it, the amount of manpower it would require if you had all these different systems. And I would dare say you guys are fishing in a pond that's full of fish that have this issue, is that they're just too spread out across all these different divisions. So, I think the beauty is that this, again, I can tell it through the marketing you guys are doing, but you're committed to the space, you're committed to the industry. And I'm excited to see, and I want to hear if anybody wants to talk. Tabitha, sounds like you were heavy within the new close, but this is something that's just you're not just buying a piece of software and you guys drop it off and give you a week of training, you're done. You, like you just said, Chris, you guys are fully invested in this. You want to see every one of these modules maximized 100%, or at least working toward that direction, right?
Yeah.
And then outside, we have an implementation team. They're going to help, set up the system. Once you go live, you'll have the Aspire care team, the customer success. So, to me, thinking about, our team and our Aspire and our parent company, Service Titan, we all just want to make the lives better of our users. I think we're all here for a really important reason. And we have true belief that it can do that for them. So, having those conversations, understanding their businesses during the sales cycle, but also during the implementation process. Let's make sure we get this set up correctly. So it's going to help you scale. It's going to help you do this for the long term, right? You don't want to change softwares every few years, because software change is not always the easiest one. And making sure after it's implemented that we still provide support, and that our product team is invested into what our clients are saying. So it's a real team effort at Aspire.
No, I use the analogy too of we're looking at the company I work with now. We're looking at different software solutions, and the last thing I'll say on this is it's not where the puck is today. If you're really looking at a good software piece, and a good software is a challenge. It's like a relationship. You never find the 100% perfect match, but you find someone that's pretty damn close to what you're looking for and you think you can work with for the long term. But, it's really important too, with software, and this is the message I'll say to people that are listening to this, is that it's not where you are today that you want to design toward. Yeah, you want to design toward that, but I got to imagine you want to design to where you want to be, because I'd rather have to chase the software and catch up with the software to some level versus all of a sudden a year from now, to your point, Tabitha, that you outrun it, and next thing you know, you've got to upgrade to another system because you basically you maxed out the possibility of growing that software. So any comments on that I'd welcome, but that's the challenge we're going through right now, is making sure that we're looking far enough down the road that we're not under designing what we need or under speccing what we need.
Yeah, and when we think about the growth and the scalability, the system also allows for different branches and EIN numbers. So if you scale to different locations and you need that flexibility, that's an important consideration as well.
Okay. How about we do this? We'll take a short little break, and let's do get the demo set up, and we'll go into a demo mode, and I'm sure I'll have 1,000 questions, and you guys can go from there. So does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds good.